it's time for another lot of questions and answers. Thank you so much for sending these in. It really does help both probably you and other people. So first of all, I've got an announcement to make. I've started an email newsletter. I will keep in touch with everyone throughout the gardening year with tips and tricks. And for everyone that signs up, you get access to an exclusive video called Rosy's Secret Garden, which is a deep dive into some of my favourite planting combinations and styles. Okay, right. Hi there, I would love it if you could do a video on what cuttings we should be taking this time of year. Many thanks. Right, well this is something whereby you can still be taking some tip cuttings, especially things that perhaps you want to get as slightly more mature plants to overwinter. So some of your salvias, for instance, or maybe even the odd dahlia. But it's really in the middle of the summer, it's the time for semi-ripe cuttings. So for things such as rosemary and lavender, those are what you should be looking at. Now again, if you are interested in propagation, then please do follow the link below, because we have just produced an online propagation course to help everybody, and this will reach everybody worldwide. Hi Rosie, great information, love the channel. I've got 5-year-old Phlomis russelliana plants in sandy loam, several of them, zone 5, northeast USA. Only 1 or 2 stalks of blooms come up every year. I don't fertilise. How do I get more blooms? Okay, so if you've got several plants, then I suggest doing different things to different clumps to see which technique works. But if they've been in 5 years, then they probably need to be lifted and split. Then you can re-put them back into the same area, but make sure that you put them in with plenty of organic matter, and that will be fine. But do not do them all at the same time. Lift and split some of them in the autumn, and lift and split some of them in the spring. That way you will see which react best to that type of treatment. Giving them this little bit of shock treatment of lifting and splitting really does help a plant and stimulates it into flowering. The only other thing I can suggest is that perhaps the stock that you have got may have been raised from seed, and sometimes with seedling variation you get slightly different clones and they just don't want to become very floriferous. And if by lifting and splitting and moving them and doing them at the 2 different times, giving them a little bit of food when you put them back in, does not work, then I think you need to find some floriferous clones and replace with those. I hope that helps. Hello Rosie, I wonder if you might have some advice for one of my roses that's in a container, 2 years old and has developed rose gall, a small area at the base of the rose. Can it be saved, and if not, will I get in a 2 or 3 years from it? It's in a large pot arch. Well, I'm afraid to say that if that gall is right at the base, it sounds like Crown Gall, and Crown Gall, I'm afraid, is very infectious, can also get not just roses, it can get other plants. Luckily for you, your plant is in a container, and really I'm sorry, the only thing you can do is destroy it. It is you know, cutting the gall off, doing any of those treatments, because this is a fungal disease, is a disease that will go through, and if it gets into the soil can go and infect other plant material. So I'm sorry, you really do need to destroy it. You need to either, if you're allowed to burn it. If not, bag it and bin it. Do not have it anywhere else around near in your garden. I divided Iris sibirica about 4 years ago. I then replanted the younger bits in the same place and potted on the spare. Neither have since flowered. Why might that be? Okay, so if you have divided the pieces and you've made them really quite small, it can take them quite a bit of time to become a mature enough plant to flower, but 4 years sounds good. You don't say how well they're growing, you just say that they're not flowering. If you put them into the same place but you did not add any organic matter or any extra feed, then that will also be part of the reason why they are not blooming. Because if you didn't feed and water them when you put them back in, which is always good practice, they can then struggle to then get into a point where they are going to do. So I would suspect the best thing to do is give them some liquid feed, and use a tomato feed or use maxi crop, which is seaweed food, both for the ones that are in the containers and the ones in the ground. And you need to start doing it now so that they build up reserves and they get enough food growing through this late summer season of growing. And then in the spring, again, give them a bit of feed, and then hopefully they will then come into flower for you. I have a question. I'm moving house in the autumn and wish to take my lovely white climber rose. It has been planted for 5 years. Can I transplant it, and how to do it? I don't want to kill it. Thank you. Now, this has been answered by another person, and absolutely they've given you the correct information, and the answer is yes, you can move it. What you need to do is you need to take your border spade, and you need to be cutting all the way around in a nice big circle around the roots of the actual plant that you want to lift. You want to water and feed the plant, and then every 2 to 3 weeks you want to be continuing to do this, cutting down and going lower each time you put the spade into the ground, so that you're basically creating a big root ball. This will then be able to be lifted. Now, it sounds as though you're going to be moving in the autumn, which means the plant will be going into dormancy, so you will be able to reduce the height of the actual plant. You don't need to take all of that top growth with you. You will be able to reduce it down, and as long as you have kept it going like that, you should be able to get a really good root ball out and be able to take it with you. Once you replant it in your new location, make sure you've put plenty of organic matter in there, and for the first year it will need careful watering, and then don't allow it to overgrow with its top growth in that first year, because it needs to get its roots down. I hope that helps you. Rosie, with all the rain we got here in Belgium, my potted hydrangea, Marti Grande Flora, got too much water. I decided to plant it in the ground, hoping that it would be better, and then we got more water, and basically it's not looking very happy. Right, so you wanted to know whether or not you can lift it and resurrect it. If you've taken a cutting and the cutting has taken, that is great, that's really good. However, the best thing to do is have a look at the plant you've got, just do a little scrape up the stems and see whether it's still got green underneath that first bit of brown bark that you will see on the plant. If it hasn't, then I'm sorry, the plant has drowned. If it has, then you might be able to do something with it. And the best thing to do is actually give it a prune back to live growth, lift it and put it into something which is free draining to start off to try and get it going. But to be honest, I think you're probably wasting your time doing that. If it has got so wet, it will not be a happy little plant, even if you try and resurrect it. Start afresh, keep going with a fresh one. Not sure if you've covered this topic, but I'd like to know when the best time to divide perennials is here in the UK, and can I divide GM Totally Tangerine? Thank you. Division in the UK basically follows this rule. If the plants flower in the spring, divide them in the autumn. If the plants flower in the autumn, divide them in the spring. However, there is a caveat to that. Should you be in a very cold or a frost pocket type of garden, then leave your division until the spring, because the plants will be actively growing. That also is not just a frost pocket, it's also a really wet garden. So if you're a very wet garden, it's always spring. Otherwise, spring flowering, autumn splitting, autumn flowering, spring splitting. That is the general rule of thumb to follow. Yes, in a nutshell, you can divide GM Totally Tangerine. It is better to not lift and try and put your spade right through it. It's best to take some small pieces off the side, as long as you are just doing it for your own garden. Bonjour, Rosie. Southwest France, Zone 9. I would like to plant a Hydrangea paniculata in a part shade spot. It gets dappled shade from a huge oak tree. Trunk is a long way away, so the soil is not dry. Will it still flower? Yes, they're very adaptable. Hydrangea paniculata are very good. You see them in a lot of wooded gardens, but to get them into that position, you've got to look after them. So even if it's not going to go into dry soil, in the first year of planting, you do need to make sure you've put plenty of organic matter into the hole where you've put it. You make sure that if there is a dry spell, you water and perhaps give a bit of liquid feed. So it's how you look after it to get it to grow and establish, which is more important, and then you will have a happy plant and they will flower in those conditions. Hi Rosie, you've talked about ground cover plants and I like the idea of these suppressing weeds and providing interest between shrubs. I'm concerned it will make it difficult to feed mulch the bigger plants in the border, shrubs herbaceous. Do you have any recommendations? Well, even with the herbaceous ground covering plants, even those require some cutting back in the autumn to tidy them up, which then means that you have got plenty of space around your shrubs and other herbaceous to be able to put your mulch down. Do remember also, if you are only going to be putting a light layer of mulch on, those ground cover plants don't mind a little bit of covering. So that is what I would suggest. Give them a tidy up, make space for mulch, etc., and then mulch heavily where there is more space and a little bit lighter where there is not so much space. Hi Rosie, I'm a first-time gardener here and I bumped into your video. The lemon queen, this is Helianthus lemon queen, reads that you prune in February, March, and does it mean that you cut again in late May? Sorry, I'm confused which is the right. Okay, so basically what this is telling you is in February, May, the plant has gone through the winter, you are giving it a tidy up. It has not started to grow, so you are taking off all of the old growth, you are cutting it back down to ground level so that new growth can come through and start its new cycle. Then in May, end of May, when you're going to be doing the Chelsea chop, it will have grown up, and what you are doing there is you are pruning back the new growth so that you restrict it and you slow it down. That way you don't get such a tall plant or one that is flopping everywhere. I hope that explains it for you. Are there some plants that just don't like to be propagated by cuttings? If so, is there an easy way to determine that, or is it just trial and error? Well, there are plants that don't like having cuttings taken from, but remember, a small split or a small division is still technically a type of cutting, so it depends on what you mean by cutting. However, there are some plants which are short-lived, which there is no point in taking cuttings from and are far better done from seed. So that is probably where you need to be looking. But again, yes, it is a bit of trial and error, and the more you try, the better you will get at propagating. Please do look at the link for our new online course as well in propagating. It will be at the bottom of the screen. I have a 6-year-old crabapple tree, Zone 5, Indiana, USA. Never had a problem, but this year, overnight, the leaves turn brown and are falling off. I hope I don't lose the tree. Yes, if crabapples get into stress, they can suddenly lose and have complete failure of their leaves. And this can either be because the previous year it was really cold and for some reason they got stressed. Stress can happen for many different reasons with these plants, and it can be as simple as the fact that they got waterlogged in the winter. They've managed to regrow and then suddenly it's got hot and they've lost everything. So have a little look at the tree, have a little bit of a bark scrape so you can see whether or not you've got green growth behind there. If it's brown, then it may have got a fungal disease. That is something else, but it's more likely to be stress. Just leave the plant be, let it see what happens, and sometimes they come back with an autumn flush of foliage, and then you won't get any crab apples this year, I'm afraid, but you will have a saved plant. If it is fungal, then you may be taking it out. Hello from the French Alps. I've encountered some problems with my young fig tree. Last autumn, half of the leaves withered prematurely on one side, removed it. On the other half, the leaves fell naturally. This spring, no leaves on the left branch, and the leaves only part of the right branch. They were sickly, but have not developed and unfurled. Since then, the right side seems to have recovered, good growth on the side of the figs, and more hopeful, but wondered what it could be, if something could be done to save this much loved tree. Okay, and also had a little bit of a weakened little stem coming up. So it sounds as though you've got some sort of fungal growth gone into the side, or an infection gone into one side. This could be as simple as a little split in the stem and then that side of the plant has actually got damaged. You need to have taken that old growth off as well and let the good side come through. Hopefully it won't go through to the other side, it's just contained in that side. If you get some good new strong growth coming from the base, I would allow some of those to come up, not all of them, but allow one or two and see if they grow out properly and look healthy, in which case you will be starting to get a new plant on one side, and then you can start to prune it and train it so that it doesn't look lopsided. Keep going with the bit that is okay. Do give it a feed and try not to over prune the good side, and I think you'll find it will start to grow out. Figs are usually pretty good, they're pretty strong growing. I think you may just have been unfortunate and just got something like a fungal or bacterial growth in that one side from damage or something like that. Anyway, persevere with it and hopefully you get some good figs. Thank you very much for watching, and please do subscribe to the channel. If you want to watch another video of mine, YouTube thinks this one is perfect for you.